ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaste my dear friends, this is video number 13 on Panchadasi of Swami Vidyarnaya. This video starts with chapter number 4, part 3, Testimony of Scripture. Those who are engaged in vain disputations and crude logic argue that on the Vedantic theory there is no bondage, no liberation, none to be bound and none to be liberated, and that the Vedanta has no truth to give to humanity. But all their specious arguments have been criticized and shown to be fallacious in such treatises as Khandana. The Vedanta traces its doctrines to the Vedanta text, scriptures, and traditional codes. The final court of appeal is the testimony of the Vedas. 1,000 arguments cannot prove that a pot is a cloth. Logical reasoning is employed as an aid to the Vedas and not as their enemy. The Vedas and the Puranas declare that the self is the witness which illumines both the existence and the prior non-existence of mental modes. The self is real because it is the locus of unreal world. It is of the nature of intelligence since it illumines all inert things. Being ever the object of infinite love, it is of the nature of bliss, because it is the source of all auspicious things, and because it is the basis of all things, it is the plenary bliss. In these and other words, the Seva Puranas distinguish the Kutastha from the changing world, the finite Jiva and the non-absolute Isvara. The Jiva and the Isvara are not absolutely real because of the scriptural passage which says Maya created the Jiva and Isvara as reflections. But there is this difference between the Jiva and Isvara on the one hand and the rest of the world on the other. While the former are clear and intelligent, the latter is dull and inert. Though pots are similar in being pots, a glass jar differs from an ordinary pot in that while the former is clear and transparent, the latter is not. Both mind and body are products of food, but whereas the mind is subtle, the body is gross. Likewise, the Jiva and Isvara, though products of Maya, differ from rest of the world in being intelligent and luminous. It may be asked how the Jiva and Isvara can be illusory and intelligent at the same time. But this is not a difficult task for Maya, which has the power of accomplishing the impossible. Maya not only creates Isvara, but it also invests him with attributes like omniscience, etc. Unlike the Jiva and Isvara, the Kutastha is not a product of Maya. There is no excellence created by Maya in the self, and there is no evidence to prove that the Kutastha is a product of Maya. All the Vedantas declare with one voice that the self is absolutely real, self-evident, and uncontradicted by any other fact of experience. The Jiva and Isvara are illusory creations of Maya, and they in their turn produce the entire universe. But the Kutastha is unattached, impartite, and immutable. It produces nothing, nor is it produced by anything else. In reality, there is no dissolution, no creation. There is no one bound, no one longing for release, and none liberated. This is the supreme truth. But this real nature of the self is beyond the reach of speech and mind. Hence, scripture declare the truth, basing itself either on the world, the Jiva, or Isvara. It adopts whatever mode of teaching would easily reveal the truth. The wise discern the real through the aid of scripture, but the ignorant wallow in darkness, being unable to get at the truth. Chapter 9, Elucidation of Meditation. Dhyana-dipa Prakarana. The Dhyana-dipa distinguishes the way of meditation from the way of discrimination and declares that the former, though not directly instrumental to Brahma intuition, is an auxiliary thereto. Meditation is prescribed in the Upanishads for those who are not fit for the path of knowledge. It arrests the current of the mind which courses its way to objects of sense and causes it to contemplate Brahma. The meditation stated to be conducive to Brahma knowledge in this chapter is the meditation on Brahma without attributes. Nirgunopasana leads to Brahma knowledge. Meditation on Brahma. Part 1 of Chapter 9. Meditation on Brahma. The meditation on Brahma can be compared to a delusion that is fruitful. Though it must be characterized as illusory, it yields fruitful result. Innumerable meditations are prescribed in the Upanishads like the tapanya as the means to release. Samvadi Bharma is a delusion. Samvadi Bharma is a delusion which yields a fruitful result. Both the light of lamp and the light of a gem may be mistaken for a gem. Both are equally cases of delusion. But the man who mistakes the lamp light for gem and approaches it gains nothing, whereas the man who mistakes the light of a gem for the gem itself gets the gem. The former is not, while the latter is, a delusion which culminates in a fruitful end. These are instances of Samvadi and Visamvadi Bharma, respectively, in the field of perception. There are also inferences which are delusive and yet fruitful. A person mistakes steam for smoke and infers the existence of fire. He hastens to the place where he thinks there is fire, and as chance would have it, he finds fire there. The existence of fire does not make his inference valid, but still it serves the purpose of that man who was in search of fire. In scripture, it is declared that bathing in the sacred rivers cleanses a man and confers merit on him. A person thinking that the Godavari is the Ganga bathes in that river or sprinkles its water on his head Mistaking the Godavari for the Ganga is no doubt as delusion, but still the sprinkling of the sacred water makes the man pure and holy. It is said in the sacred text that if a person utters the name of the Lord at the moment of his death, he attains heaven. A dying man may utter the name of the Lord even without intention. Still, it is declared that he reaches heaven. All these are cases of Samvadi Bharma, culled from different fields of knowledge. The spheres of perception, inference, and verbal testimony alike give us cases of numerous delusions bearing fruitful result. If the possibility of Samvadi Bharma be ruled out of court, then the worship of stocks and stones cannot be explained. We hear of many meditations on imposed form in the Upanishads. It is said that woman is to be regarded as fire. We read that mind is to be contemplated as Brahma. All these would be unintelligible if all delusions be regarded as utterly fruitless. It is an incontrovertible fact that sometimes knowledge of an unreal object yields the desired fruit, just as Samvadi Bharma through delusive is the source of a fruitful result. Even so, meditation on the real nature of Brahma causes the fruit of release. Does a man meditate on Brahma after knowing its real nature? Or is meditation possible for a man who is ignorant of the real nature of Brahma? On the first alternative, meditation would be to no purpose since there is present knowledge, the direct means to release. On the second, meditation would be impossible because the object of meditation is unknown. The object must be known before there can be meditation thereon. If if thus it be said, the reply is the man who meditates on Brahma is not totally ignorant about it, nor has he an immediate intuitive experience of Brahma. He learns from the Vedantas that Brahma is of one consistency of impartite intelligence, and his meditation takes the form I am this Brahma. That meditation on an object mediately known is possible is well proved by the worship of deities like Vishnu. The worshipper of Vishnu has not an immediate knowledge of the object of his worship. He reads the description of Vishnu in the sacred text and begins to meditate on the deity even without an immediate experience of thereof. Nor can it be said that because his knowledge is mediate, the object of his knowledge and meditation is unreal and illusory. Immediate experience or perception is not the only test of truth. Verbal testimony gives him knowledge, though mediate of the true form of the object of his worship, and this is enough to kindle in him meditation. In the same way, even meditation on Brahma is made possible by the mediate knowledge gained from scripture. From the Upanishad, it is known that Brahma is of the nature of reality, intelligence, and bliss. But because Brahma is not realized to be identical with the inner witness, the immediate experience of Brahma is not gained. The true nature of Brahma is determined in the way mentioned in scripture. This is no doubt mediate knowledge, but nevertheless it is the knowledge of the true and not of the illusory. The Avantara Vakyas of the Upanishads give only a immediate knowledge of Brahma, but the Mahavakyas make known the immediate and intuitive nature of Brahma knowledge. They declare that Brahma is non-different from the inner self, but still the Mahavakyas do not convey their sense to those who do not perpend them. Those who inquire into the implication of the Mahavakyas get an immediate intuition of Brahma, and not those who have superficial knowledge of their sense. The reason why all do not gain intuitive experience even after studying the Mahavakyas is this: the dull-witted who identify themselves with the body, senses, and mind do not realize their identity with Brahma. The cognition that the body, etc., constitute the self obstructs the real knowledge of Brahma, and the wrong notion can be dispelled only through enquiry. Hence, for a man who has not inquired into the purport of the Mahavakyas, there is no immediate experience of Brahma. One who knows the Shastras easily understands immediately the true nature of Brahma, but on account of the obstruction caused by lack of inquiry, he does not get Brahma intuition. On the contrary, the sphere of his immediate experience is the world of woes and worries, but still the immediate cognition of Brahma and the immediate experience of the world do not contradict each other in his case. A worshipper of idols sees before him only idols made of stone or stock, but this does not in any way hinder his immediate cognition of the Lord. He does not debate or discuss whether there can or cannot be the presence of the Lord in idols. Through instruction from a trustworthy person or through study of scripture, he gets a mediated cognition of the nature and form of the object of his worship, and even without inquiry or discussion, he meditates on the deity of his heart. When there is doubt as to what is to be undertaken and what not, there is inquiry conducted in scripture into religious rites and meditations, but the ordinary run of mankind is incapable of undertaking the inquiry afresh. And so a man who has faith in the sacred text begins to perform the rites even without inquiry on the basis of declarations found in the Kalpa Sutras, etc. Similarly, in the case of meditations, those who have faith in scripture and are not intellectually virile to conduct fresh inquiry perform the meditations as they are described in the treatise of sages. The learned inquire into the passage of the Vedas in order to determine their purport. But even without such inquiry, the performance of rites and meditation is made possible. Now, part 2 of Chapter 9: Inquiry Essential for Brahma Intuition. If meditation on Brahma be not dependent on inquiry, why should Brahma intuition be the result of inquiry? Just as mere instruction is sufficient to cause meditation, so also Upadesa may lead to Brahma Sakshatkara. If thus it be said, the reply is: Brahma intuition is not possible without inquiry. Just as lack of faith obstructs immediate knowledge, lack of inquiry is an obstacle to immediate intuition. Faith, in the words of scripture, gives immediate knowledge. Inquiry into the purport of scripture leads to Brahma intuition. If even after inquiring once into the real nature of the self, a person does not get immediate experience of Brahma, then he must continue his inquiry till it culminates in Brahma intuition. The goal of inquiry is intuition of the self, but owing to some obstacle, inquiry may not immediately cause Brahma intuition. If in this life Brahma intuition be not achieved on account of obstruction caused by some obstacle, then in the next life, when the obstacle is removed, the true nature of the self will be realized. Evidence for this fact is found in the Vedanta Sutra, chapter 3, stanza number 51. In this life also, the origination of knowledge takes place. If there is no obstruction of what is ready at hand on account of this being seen in scripture, the Sutrakara says that knowledge is gained either in this life or in the next or in some other life. Scripture declares that the self is not known so long as there is some obstacle. Many people, though they study, do not realize the self in this life. We hear of instances of men like Vamdeva attaining release while remaining yet in the mother's womb. The student who studies the Vedas by rote remembers what he has studied even after the lapse of some days. Similarly, what is done in one life does not go to waste. The seeds that are sown in this life may yield their fruit in some future life. The fruition of the inquiry into the self is sure, though it may be slow. The Vartika says that the non-rise of Brahma intuition even after frequent inquiry is due to three kinds of obstacles. It is only when all the obstacles are removed that there results Brahma knowledge. Obstacles, we said, are of three kinds: past, present, and future. Though a person might have studied the Vedas and the Vedantas, if there be present in him any of these obstacles, he is not released. As an illustration of this fact, the example is given in scripture of a man who walks over a mine of gold without knowing the existence of the mine at that place. Here the obstacle is the earth that covers the treasure. The story is told of an ascetic who, on account of his former affection for a buffalo, could not easily understand the true nature of self. His preceptor, knowing the mental tendencies of the ascetic, instructed him how Brahma is the truth even of the buffalo he loved. Then it is said the obstacle in the form of affection for the buffalo was removed and the ascetic realized the true nature of Brahma. This is an instance of an obstacle which relates to past time. The ascetic's love for the buffalo has reference to the time when the ascetic was a householder, that is, before he renounced the world. That love stands as an obstacle to the acquirement of Brahma knowledge. The obstacle that relates to present time is fourfold: attachment to objects, dullness of intellect, and bad reasoning, and foolish obstination in asserting what is contrary to truth. These obstacles are removed by calmness, etc., and study, etc. Each kind of obstacle is to be met by the appropriate means that can remove it. With regard to the removal of obstacles that relate to future time, no time limit can be set. The Vamdeva one life was enough for completely overcoming all the obstacles. But Bharta took 3 lives before the obstacles could be discarded. Agami Pratibandha or obstacles that relates to future time is the remnant of one's prarabdha. As the quantity of prarabdha varies with different people, so also the length of time required for the removal of the obstacle has a corresponding variation. Sri Krishna says in the Gita that in the case of yoga bhrashta, a man fallen from the path, the destruction of obstacles is during the course of many lives. Inquiry can never be fruitless. If it does not bear its fruit in this life, then it must be due to some obstacle that clogs the way. And when the obstacle is removed, the stream of inquiry resumes its course and reaches its goal, which Brahma intuition. In the Gita, Sri Krishna says that no man who earnestly strives to reach the goal need lose heart. A man who inquires into the true nature of the self till the very end of his life and does not, owing to some obstruction, achieve Brahma knowledge, attains to the worlds of the righteous and reincarnates in the home of the pure and the prosperous, or else he is born in a family of yogins who possess the knowledge of the real nature of Brahma. This indeed is very rare to obtain because it is difficult. There he is united with the cognition acquired in his previous life and strives more than before for perfection. By that previous practice alone he is born alone in spite of himself and then gaining perfection by degrees through many lives, he reaches the supreme goal, just like the residual prarab- prarabdha, even the desire for attaining the world of Brahma, etc., is an obstacle that has reference to the future. The man who desires to reach Brahmaloka does not inherit Brahma, even though he may inquire into the purport of the Vedanta. It is said in scripture that he attains Brahmaloka and is released along with Brahma at the end of the world aeon. So I stop this video here. Next video number 14 will start with part 3 of chapter 9. Thank you my dear friends for watching this video. Namaskar.